Hello again everyone from Tokyo, Japan, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera, where it's a very wonderful day here at the park. It's been a while since I last made a video, and this is because we just got through the Golden Week holiday. Technically we're still kind of in Golden Week. Today is not actually a national holiday like the last 3 days were, or like Friday was, but a lot of people have taken today off to kind of make a full week of the holiday. And like other Japanese people, I and my family took some time off. We did a little bit of traveling around and tried to, I guess, step back a little bit from the normal hubbub of life which we have here in Japan most of the year. Here in Tokyo Midtown, there was a Hawaiian festival held here, and the main attraction to the Hawaiian festival was hula dancing. And hula dancing is a very popular pastime here in Japan. Hawaii is probably the most popular destination for Japanese people outside the country. And if you've been to Honolulu or other places in Oahu, the main language is English, the second language is Japanese, and then the third language is probably the native Hawaiian language, which is kind of a sad thing, but unfortunately that's the way it is. Or fortunately or unfortunately, I guess it depends on your point of view. But here in Japan, Hawaii is a very popular place. People love to go there, they love to talk about it, they love to wear Hawaiian shirts, drink Hawaiian coffee, and reminisce about trips they've made to Hawaii or planned trips, future trips to go to Hawaii, which is something that we're kind of in the process of doing right now. Normally we go to Hawaii every year. Hawaii is in America, obviously, and it's probably the closest real American territory here to Japan. We can go to Guam or places like that, but it's not really the same as actually going to an actual American state. Flying to the mainland is kind of an ordeal, especially if you have kids. Going to California is like an 11-hour flight between here and there, only 9 hours or so coming back. But Hawaii is only 7 hours, and if you time the flight right, kids can sleep at night, and it's kind of a more stress-free international travel place. So hopefully sometime this summer we'll get a chance to go back out there again. But anyway, we're about 2.5 minutes into the video here, so I suppose I should go ahead and get started about the subject of today's video. This is one which I've, like other cameras, which I've wanted to do for a long time, but I just haven't been able to find a good example to use as a subject. And this video is going to be about the Mamiya Super Deluxe. This is the particular model with the 48mm f1.5, which is the hardest to find version and probably the most collectible, and one which a lot of Mamiya fans are really in love with. Unfortunately, these cameras weren't built in large numbers, and they suffer from a few problems which have caused a lot of them to be discarded over the years. And this particular camera, when I saw it listed for sale online, it looked quite clean and I had high hopes for it, but when I received it, it was quite in good condition, as you can see, but unfortunately I found that the shutter's not working. And a non-working shutter in one of these cameras isn't a really big deal. I can usually get the shutter running again fairly quickly, but I found that the aperture blades were knocked loose on the inside of the camera, and so this one is going to require some major surgery to get it up and running again. And it's not the kind of work I like to do on a camera like one of these, especially one with a coupled light meter with electrical contacts inside the aperture and shutter speed rings. So I will get into it, but I'm in no hurry to subject myself to that hardship. So to go ahead and start with, I'll go ahead and make a video about the camera as I'm doing now, and then hopefully sometime next week I'll get a chance to take it apart and see if I can't get it up and running again. So anyway, the Mamiya Super Deluxe was a run of cameras which I guess the evolution began in the 1950s with the Auto Deluxe, which was a somewhat more compact camera with an f1.7 lens, and this was converted or I guess evolved into the Super Deluxe camera, which featured the same lens. This was around the time that Yashica had brought out the Lynx 14, and Mamiya thought it might be a good idea to make a similar camera with a large lens to compete against the Lynx 14, and so the Super Deluxe was born. And I don't know if you can tell by looking in the video, but this is a really big lens on the front of this camera. It's similar in size to the 50mm f1.2 L-mount lens, which you find on Canon rangefinder cameras, the interchangeable lens rangefinder cameras. This was the fastest lens which Mamiya made in a fixed lens rangefinder camera, and it's very highly regarded here in Japan, and these cameras tend to go for big money here. The ones which I've seen in decent condition recently are selling it for up in the $500 range. So a very popular camera, because of the quality of the lens and also because of its rarity. Let's go ahead and take a look at the features, controls, and functions of the Mamiya Super Deluxe. And starting on the top here, we have this kind of squared away design on the front, a little bit curved on the back corners here. It's an attractive camera, kind of easy to hold, and you kind of need it to be easy to hold when it has this much weight on the front from this large lens. Up here we have a fold out rewind knob similar to what we have on other Mamiya rangefinder cameras from this vintage and earlier. We have a shoe for mounting a flash, and underneath the shoe you will find the access ports for adjusting the rangefinder. This camera, of course, does not have a hot shoe for mounting a flash, but there is a PC sync socket located here on the side of the lens, and you can operate this camera quite well with an old flash gun or even a strobe flash. We have a couple of flash settings here on the side for X and M, for depending on which kind of flash you like. You can use fill flash with this camera with the modern strobe flash, or you can use it as the camera was intended to be used, using like the flash sync speed with a bulb flash. Over here we have the light meter readout. This camera features a built-in battery-powered CDS light meter. There's a light meter cell located right up here in the top, and there's a power switch on the back which you use to switch the light meter off and on. And it's a match needle system for the light meter. What you will do is you will turn the shutter speed ring and aperture ring in combination to get this green needle to line up in between the two pointers. If the needle is lined up here, then the camera should be able to take a proper exposure. The light meters on these, when you get one which is in working condition, are actually pretty accurate. Even if you're using, say, a 1.5 volt battery instead of the original 1.3 mercury battery, it still works quite well. Some issues with that you can run across with these: sometimes the contacts for the coupled flash are dirty, and the aperture and shutter speed rings, so the meter needle might move a little bit erratically, so you just have to handle these rings a little bit more gently when you turn them. Another issue is that the light meter on these cameras, maybe 70% of the time, doesn't work at all. And most of this is usually due to battery contact under the battery chamber being corroded and disconnected. If you're handy with a soldering iron, you can reconnect the wire, or usually the wire itself is corroded for a good length, sometimes from one end to the other, making it very difficult to solder, so you might have to replace the wire. But usually when the wire is replaced, you can get the light meter working again. Over here we have the shutter release button, which accepts a standard cable release, and here we have the film winding and shutter charging button. And as I said, the shutter in this is not working. The problem with the copal shutter in these cameras, and not just in this particular model, or Citizen shutter I believe it is in this camera, is that oil migrates onto the shutter blades and onto the aperture blades, and in some cases you can clean it out. You can simply unscrew the entire front lens element from the inside here using a rubber stopper. And that will give you access to the shutter blades, and you can free them up with a solvent of some type. And if you get the shutter open, make sure to do the same thing to the aperture blades. Try to get as much oil off of them as you can, because otherwise, if you twist them too hard, they can pop out of track like they have on this one. And worse yet, sometimes the pins in the blades, the ones which open and close the blades, can shear off. And once that happens, you have to find replacement aperture blades, and that's kind of a difficult situation. But yeah, if you get one of these and the aperture ring is really tight and you can't get it to move, don't force it. Remove the front of the lens and try to free things up with a little bit of solvent, lighter fluid, something like that, before you go getting too deeply into the camera. And this will allow you to maybe use the camera without breaking anything. To the front of the film winding and shutter charging lever, we have the film counter dial. Moving on the back of the camera, of course, we have the switch which I described earlier, the on and off switch for the meter. This can sometimes become corroded, the contact and the switch, and if the contact isn't good, then the light meter won't work. You can use a small file to file between the contacts, that works to get these working sometimes, and also if you have an old Canon 7 rangefinder camera, sometimes that's an issue in those cameras as well. They have a similar switch on the back between switching between the standard and high modes of the light meter, and often the contact is dirty. If you clean it up, the light meter starts to work better. Over here we have the viewfinder window. The Mamiya Super Deluxe features a very good viewfinder with projected frame lines, and it offers a very good rangefinder patch. Sometimes the beam splitting mirror deteriorates over time, and that can make the focus patch start to get more dim. When I'm cleaning one of these out, and these aren't that difficult to clean out, the top cover on these is rather easy to remove compared to other cameras. You can clean up the optics, and I would clean the front of the beam splitting mirror and try to avoid touching the back of the beam splitting mirror, because the reflective coating can rub off very easily. And if that happens, then you have to replace the mirror. If you clean up the rest of the optics on the inside, usually you can improve the contrast for the rangefinder without damaging the reflective coating. And it may not be as clean as you like, but it's more than clean enough to use and to focus the camera easily. Moving to the bottom of the camera, we have the battery cover, we have a standard 1/4-inch tripod socket, we have the release button, which you use to release the film winding mechanism, so you can rewind the film. On the left side here, we have the latch, which pops open the film door. And looking on the inside of the camera, you can see the rear of the lens here is pretty much just a solid piece of glass covering the inside of the chamber here. And this camera features, or I won't say it features, but it comes with the old foam style light seals instead of the yarn style. So if you have one of these old cameras, more than likely it's going to have the light seals replaced. All the cameras which I sell on my stores, I always replace the light seals in them. It's not that difficult to do on this camera, because luckily the light seals are located on the door rather than in the channels here, so it's a little bit easier to put in light seals. There are some places which sell light seal material on eBay or Amazon. There's a company called Japan Hobby Tool. They usually sell it. The standard size for these cameras is the 1.5 millimeter. It's best to get the kind that has the adhesive back, so you can just cut off strips with scissors, remove the tape backing, and just stick them inside, and that'll get the light seals back into working condition again, and you can use the camera. Loading the film is simple. Just pop open the rewind fork here, drop your film canister, feed the end of the film leader into the take-up spool, and simply wind and fire the shutter until the film is being taken up by the teeth on the take-up sprocket. Close the film door and wind the film and fire the shutter until the number 1 shows up here in the film counter window and the camera is ready to go. Moving to the front of the camera, we have a focusing tab and focusing ring. It's colored in silver here to make it easier to see the numbers, and we have focusing scales in both meters and feet. We have a depth of field scale located here, as well as having an infrared indicator. Not many of these old fixed lens rangefinder cameras have an indicator for using infrared film. Not that many people use infrared film nowadays, but for those oddballs like me who still like to use it, this is a handy thing to have. We have a built-in self-timer in the camera. We have the selector switch here, as I mentioned, for the flash mode. On the bottom here we have the selector lever, which you use to set the film speed, and as you push this up or down you can set the film speed in this window. Maybe you can see the numbers turning as I turn the dial. Just program it into here. In front of that we have the aperture ring. I'm only moving a little bit because I said the aperture is kind of pulled apart on the inside. And in the front here we have the shutter speed ring. And as I said earlier in the video, this camera features a coupled light meter, so there are electrical contacts in both the shutter speed ring and the aperture ring, and these decrease or increase the resistance as you turn them. This allows the computer or light meter to compensate for the shutter and aperture settings, and as you turn these dials you should see the needle move up and down. The lens in this camera is, I said earlier, an excellent performer. I'm not sure, so a lot of people really like the bokeh or out of focus highlights with this lens. To be honest, I haven't actually shot any film with one of these cameras yet, but I've looked at some of the I guess Flickr sites and whatever of Japanese shooters who love these cameras, and I'm really impressed with the results that these cameras can deliver. They're really excellent. So anyway, that's my video for the Mamiya Super Deluxe 48mm f1.5 fixed lens rangefinder camera. I have more cameras which I'm planning to do videos about. If you'd like to be the first to see these videos, please subscribe. As I've said in other videos, I'm trying to get this channel to grow, to get more people interested in vintage Japanese cameras and film photography in general. So if you'd like to help, clicking the like button really helps with us. That helps us with that. I'm thinking a little bit backwards here. I must be getting tired. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.